Yes, I'll start with Mr. Pepper, Mr. Restrepo,
Here.
Mr. Weeks,
Present.
and Chair Angelini.
Here. All right, first item of business is the approval, review and approval of the minutes of our meeting of January 22. I assume that everyone has read them. I have done so. They seem to be in order to me. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. In the absence of any discussion, we need a roll call vote to approve the minutes.
Yes, Mr. Pepper. I think Mr. Pepper, are you did you hear me on that?
Nick, can you hear us?
There he is. Looks like the audio might be a little off, Nick. I don't know. We can't hear you. We could see your mouth moving, but we couldn't hear you. Try again. Yeah.
I hear read his lips. He said yes.
Yes. Mr. Restrepo,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
and Chair Angelini.
Yes, and I think Sherry may be on. Not sure. Any event, okay. Let's go to old business. The first item with respect to this, and the only old business I think we need to deal with, is the listening session that we had. Member Weeks and I were present along with Mr. Dunn. It was attended by a few people. Peter, we're going to leave it to you to start with you at least to make some comments about what we heard and any takeaways.
Yes, and I think we can, even though it wasn't a public hearing, I took notes, and I think all of our speakers at least identified their first name, which I took down, so I can type those up for our notes and minutes for the next meeting, just to have on record. But I think it was about 5 or 6 participants from the community, mostly Worcester residents. One of our commuters that also serves on our MBTA working group, Tracy O'Connell Novick. And then we had at least one other was also a frequent commuter. We had one individual that identified themselves as an employee of Luciano's, and then just another member of the public. And I think a lot of it, some of the comments were actually more about just kind of the station itself, the functionality of the station, kind of serving commuters. Also just kind of like the convenience of commuters, amenities for commuters. There were some questions about the status of the cafe space. And I think we certainly had some commentary about observations of Luciano's operations that I think some of the folks felt like they've done a good job. Are they, eligible to, submit a bid, and would we consider that, and not necessarily fix what isn't broken, I guess is what I would characterize some of the comments as. And then some discussion around, highest and best use. I think some of the commentary, certainly from the commuter perspective, is about ensuring that we don't, I guess, lose sight of the fact that the station, first and foremost, is a train station. So making sure that we're not overlooking the needs of those commuters, especially when, there are events, larger events in the Grand Hall, making sure that there's good access for commuters if they're getting dropped off at the front door to make their way to the platform through the Grand Hall, even if there is an event going on, which is currently what happens. There is a clause in our lease agreement right now with Luciano's that talks about maintaining that safe and accessible pathway for commuters through the Grand Hall during events. And that's characterized in the RFP. We can call greater attention to it just because it is important, and make sure that any operators, whether it's Luciano's or a new operator, submits, specific plans to us about that. I do think one of the things that I've noticed that could be improved upon, and I think this may have been commented on specifically, is just better signage around that. So where there is maybe a need to have you know, the privacy for those events. Right now, it's kind of like a curtain type system and fencing that sort of like a white picket fence that Luciano's used for aesthetic purposes to create the privacy that's sometimes necessary for those events, making sure that there's, you know, good signage along that so that commuters know how to safely get over to the platform, I think is something that we would ensure as part of those plans with any operator. And then there was certainly some commentary as well about it is a public station, right? And so it's open to the public, making sure that that's maintained and that there are other users. I think that, you know, there was some differing kind of opinions, I guess you could say, about the behaviors in the station and some homeless activity. Obviously, when folks are trying to get out of the heat in the summer months or get out of the cold in the winter months, we do have some folks that, you know, go into the station that might not be actually getting on a train. So just some commentary around that, as well as I think it was perhaps the employee of Luciano's that talked about how that can also be disruptive to events that are happening in the Grand Hall. Certainly. And we've heard some of that feedback too from our tenant at the 961 Lebanese restaurant as well. So thinking about bathrooms, you know, there was some commentary about making sure that bathrooms are available and accessible to commuters and those that are using the station. You know, I think moving forward, whether it's Luciano's or a new operator, it's something we could certainly talk to them about. Is there a way to maybe add some additional bathrooms? Right now, Luciano's relies on the public bathrooms that are in the front of the building by the Grand Hall. And so might there be an opportunity to expand upon bathroom capacity and maybe have some bathrooms that are like within the leased premises in the restaurant? That might be something worth considering, but I don't think we would, you know, require that as part of the RFP, but just thinking about that and knowing that Luciano's has had some challenges with that over the years, that would be something that we would bring to the attention of, have a conversation with him if he's renewed, or if there's a new operator, have that conversation with them. And then I did get an email. I just wanted to make sure that I shared it with the board as well. I got an email afterwards. It was somebody that could not attend, and it was similar. I'm just trying to bring it up here, but similar commentary around they were from the commuter perspective of like making sure that we're not, again, like losing sight of the primary purpose of the station, that when there are events, making sure that those commuters can access the platform successfully and safely.
Mr. Weeks, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think Peter, for the most part, captured most of it, the essence of it. And I guess just to reiterate is basically they're saying having a coffee shop in the morning or coming, you know, home will be paramountly helpful. So that's something we did mention is in the makings and things of that nature. So yeah.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I think it should also be noted, it should be noted that there were some concerns expressed regarding public safety, getting from the garage to the main hall and back and forth. And I know you're following up on that, Peter. And that of course needs to be a primary concern of ours, given that it is public space. And there was also some mention of access. There's a police substation in the building. It was noted by more than one speaker that police cars, squad cars, so to speak, regularly park right in front of the building and interfere with access to the building, at least in the minds of some of the commentators at the meeting, in parking and the convenience there. So I hope I followed up with the police department on that, Mr. Dunn. But there's no reason that there is space reserved for police vehicles in the garage, and that was reserved so that space in front of the building could be used by the public without any interference. So that's a matter we need to attend to. Anything you want to add with respect to that, Peter?
No, that's a good point. And as Mr. Weeks was describing, there was some I guess, ideas shared about other types of vending operations, not necessarily leased premises, but just like they've seen in other train stations, where could we have some other local vendors, whether it's members of the food hub or t-shirts, Worcester branded items, whether that's sold at the cafe or kind of like a kiosk type of model, or just being able to have those types of opportunities in addition to like what we have as a leased premises with the cafe and then with Luciano's as well.
I do think though it's I think important for us going forward, independent of the restaurant situation, to have these listening sessions every few months and invite people who use the building to come and give us their thoughts regarding how it's going. I see there's no harm in that. It's, I think, good public policy, and I'd encourage us to do that occasionally as we move ahead.
And then, Mr. Chairman, actually, if I may, I've just remembered another important one that I've already started working on with Mr. Bedard. He wasn't able to join us this morning, but about how to do this, because I think this was a very reasonable observation as well, was seating. There's pretty limited seating right now. So when people are waiting for the train, there's often full. And so adding additional seating benches or the like to make sure that folks can, not have to stand and wait for the train, especially if it's going to be a while.
Yeah, good point. It's somewhat incongruous to think about the amount of space we have in that building and the fact that there isn't enough seating here. So it's just a matter of bringing in some benches and chairs, but I'm glad you remembered that, and thank you. Okay, so that completes our old business. Peter, do you want to proceed in the order of the agenda with respect to new business, or is there anything you want to move around?
I think we were going to take out one of the status items being the Denholm building. And then we have guests from the Mankiti Group, Caroline Kenny and Mark Rangel here representing the Mankiti Group to contribute to that discussion as to the status of the Denholm. I think it might make sense. Well, I'll pause there if you're in agreement with that, and then I'll kind of.
Yeah, that's fine. Caroline and Mark, are you on?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yeah, there's no need to keep you busy, and there's no need to keep you waiting until the end of the session. So we're pleased to talk with you now about this. All right. Well, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Peter, do you want to tee this up?
Sure. And then just reflecting on, I know everybody took a look at the minutes from the last meeting. So when we discussed at the last meeting, potentially moving in the direction of having the WRA pursue the abatement and demolition of the building to get it more pad ready, de-risk the project, because as we knew from the conversations with the Mankiti Group and just experience with development projects in the city, when you have to deal with that kind of cost up front, it certainly doesn't help with the economics of the project. So we had talked about the probably likely need for subsidy on this redevelopment project as it is. And so having that significant cost just to get the site ready for that redevelopment adds to that necessity. And so as a public entity, a nonprofit kind of governmental entity, the Worcester Redevelopment Authority has more access to those types of resources. And so our recommendation was that it would make sense for the WRA to pursue that demolition and abatement activity before having the private sector commence the redevelopment. And so we had talked about, I said that I would share at this meeting a plan of what sources might be out there. What could we sort of secure to help cover those costs? So I'll just briefly share my screen for the board to kind of get a sense of some of the things that we've been looking at and starting to pursue in that regard. So I think you should be able to see my screen now. There are a number of state and federal programs for particularly environmental remediation. And as part of that, where there could be also any environmental conditions in the soil, you can also use those programs and those dollars to cover demolition costs as well. So these are some of the typical programs that we've used in the past and that we're looking at and applying for now with the board's support. And so one of which we've actually secured, we'll talk about that later on the agenda in terms of actually having authorization to then go ahead and execute that contract, is the Mass Development Site Readiness Program. It's towards the bottom of this. It's a smaller dollar amount, 500,000 is the cap on that. So we did get the maximum award of 500,000. As the name of the program would suggest, it talks about getting sites ready for development activities, whether that's development projects that lead to housing creation or job creation, tax base expansion for communities, certainly targeting underutilized sites. And so that's great. We're intending on using those dollars mostly for what's going to prepare us for the ultimate abatement and demolition work. So doing things like further investigation on the specific hazardous building materials. We know there's a lot of asbestos in the building. We had previously done, as the board might remember, sort of a baseline hazardous building materials assessment, and it was pretty, I would say, kind of surface level assessment, because that work wasn't taking down walls and really getting into some more of the invasive investigation that is likely needed for creating a scope for the actual abatement and demolition work. So we would be seeking to bring on a consultant. We'll probably identify that consultant and have a recommendation for the board at the next meeting, and the cost related to that. And then in addition to that, there'll be significant amount of dollars left on that grant to do other things to get us ready for the kind of what I would say the primary contractor that would come in and do the brunt of the abatement and demolition work. And then in terms of covering that bigger cost of the real work involved versus the pre-development type of work, the EPA Brownfields program that's at the federal level has both dollars for assessment as well as cleanup, so the remediation of those conditions. And so we have submitted applications to both of those. There's one on the assessment side of things that we've submitted that is up to 300,000 that we would anticipate hearing back in May of this year. And then what's called a multi-purpose grant that can be used for remediation and related purposes as well, up to $1 million. We submitted that and anticipate hearing back on that around the same timeframe, probably in June, just after the assessment grant awards. And then the city of Worcester has a pretty robust brownfields program, as you all might be familiar with, where we almost every year submit grant applications to the EPA. And one of the programs is called the revolving loan fund. So we receive dollars from them that then we can use. We're kind of like an intermediary in that sense, that then we can use those dollars to issue both grants and loans to applicants for remediation work at properties in the city. And there is some eligibility considerations on whether you can do a grant or a loan. So when we get these dollars from the federal government, if we have a nonprofit applicant, we can do a grant, a sub-grant to them. But for-profit developers are only eligible for loan funds out of that. So based on our current capitalization of that revolving loan fund, we're looking at a potential $500,000 sub-grant from the city of Worcester to the WRA that we could work on for this summer, kind of securing that and putting that into place for the summer, as well as potentially another $500,000, which would be a loan. And so we'll kind of like table that and figure out what's the most advantageous pathway for the WRA, because obviously the grant funds are much more advantageous than any loan funds. We've also submitted what's called a supplemental application to the EPA. So as we have this existing revolving loan fund, we can get recapitalization from the EPA on usually an annual basis. So if we are successful in getting additional capitalization, those dollars could go up and we could actually hopefully do more grant and less loan. But one of the things that we have to manage as a municipality with that is that for the totality of our revolving loan fund, we have to maintain like a 50-50 split so that we can do half of the dollars that we get in as grants, and we have to do half of the dollars as loans. It doesn't mean that every project has to be a 50-50 split. It just means that we have to manage that across all of our applicants. And we're in good shape right now. We get applications from for-profit developers fairly regularly, so that contributes to the loan side of things, and then it allows us to do as much as we can on the grant side of things with nonprofit applicants. So those are the kind of federal side of things and through the EPA. And then This year, every year, there's an opportunity with the state. It's called the Community One Stop Program. It's due in June. So we're working on an application for that process that's due in June. And this kind of what they call the one-stop process is an aggregation of a number of different programs across the State Economic Development Office, Mass Development, the State Office of Housing and Livable Communities. So it's kind of like a, as the name kind of suggests, a one-stop process to submit an application for a project that you have, and then identifying which program across those state agencies is the most appropriate to assist you with that application. And so we're going to submit an application there. It could be, you know, we're looking at, there's a Housing Works program, which is dollars through the State Economic Development Office to do things related to infrastructure and preparing sites for economic development purposes. In the case of Housing Works, it's focused on creating housing opportunities as a result. There's also the Mass Development Brownfields program that would be part of that process. So just with the different opportunities that come in through that, we think that $2 million is a reasonable expectation that we could, you know, get from that process. And then the last piece is recently we submitted an application through Congressman McGovern for the latest round of congressionally directed spending, which is the technical term for federal earmarks. And so we submitted a $1 million application through the Congressman's office for a potential $1 million federal earmark as well.
And what is the anticipated total cost of demolition and site preparation, Peter?
We're going to, you know, really refine that through our work with the site readiness program when we bring on this consultant that we anticipate identifying and having a contract in front of the board next month that'll really get into the details around that. What we have right now is the estimate provided by the Menkidi Group and their efforts through their due diligence of $7 million. But I think that there was a significant amount of assumptions built into that cost estimate. And contingencies, I'm sure. So we're trying to use some of the dollars that we already have secured through this site readiness grant to really get into some specifics around scoping that and getting updated cost estimates from that consulting firm. It's a, you know, engineering and environmental consulting firm that we're identifying for that purpose.
So is it, I'll open it to other questions, but is it your view that in one way or another, through the various sources you've identified, that we could have available to us the funds necessary for demolition, even if they're in that $7 million range?
Yeah, we're optimistic about that. So right now, this total is about 5.8 million. We have a couple other ideas. We do still have dollars left. It's about $1 million on our loan authorization that we've been using for carrying costs. And so we had originally obtained that loan authorization with the intent to potentially use some of that for demolition as well. Obviously, it is loan authorization, so we're trying to maximize the, you know, grants and other subsidies before looking at debt involved. But we would feel pretty good about ultimately securing what we would need to do to cover the whole cost of getting it down.
Okay. So beyond this, before going further, are there questions from any member of the authority regarding Peter has just told us? Okay, thank you. All right, then how would you like to proceed, Peter?
And I did have this, I know that there's a few different attachments. In particular, there's one of the agenda items is a contract that it takes up a lot of the meat of the pages in your packet, but there is also a what we received from the Menkidi Group. So again, just reminding you on what we talked about a little bit last meeting was that as we go in this direction for the WRA to undertake the abatement and demolition work of the property, it inherently has implications to the land disposition and development agreement with the Menkidi Group. In addition to the fact that at this moment, it's a pretty kind of significant month for us on the calendar, because this is the date, March of 2026, where the Menkidi Group's current due diligence period expires. And then if you remember when we did Amendment 1 to the land disposition agreement with the Menkidi Group, one of the conditions of that was that there would be a $7,500 monthly non-refundable deposit that would accrue to the WRA from the Mankiti Group, and that begins in April, at the conclusion of this due diligence period that's expiring now. And so some of the inherent implications of that is that, as you all remember, we had offered a $2.5 million credit if our redevelopment partner was going to do the abatement and demolition of the building. And so where we would be, embarking on this now as a redevelopment authority, there would not be that credit. So we have to address that aspect of the land disposition agreement. And then timing, right? So like now we would be sort of driving the schedule because the Mankiti Group wouldn't be able to commence their redevelopment activities until the property is turned over to them and is sort of what we would call like more pad ready. And so certainly as the Mankiti Group was also looking at that, and I think they appreciate our efforts over the last several months. As you know, when we did amendment number 1, a lot of that was about strategizing between us and them about how do we tackle this abatement and demolition. And so I think they're in agreement. I want to speak for them, but I think they're in agreement with us going in this direction because it, I think, seems to be the most advantageous way to get the building down. But as part of that, I think a reasonable question that they have or consideration is like, what is the sort of condition of the property as we then, turn it over? So is it, are all the foundations out? Is it, backfilled to like have the stabilization of the site versus a hole in the ground? Just what are the conditions of the site once we finish our work and turn it over to them? They have offered some language for us to consider. I don't expect us to vote on anything today, but they've offered some language for us to consider as a potential amendment number 2 that addresses those key items that have implications on the agreement as we go down this direction. One thing that I would say is just that as we are going to really wrap our arms around the cost of this and some of the more detailed conditions and what we would expect to accomplish with this, I think some of the details related to sort of like the pad ready conditions, we might have to have something more of like mutually agreeable kind of conditions on that, because the language that they've offered, rightfully I get why, but it's fairly specific, and I just don't know that we're ready to be that specific about what the condition will be of the site as we turn it over. But I understand, that is going to be an important thing for the Mankiti Group to understand, because they're going to have to build into their budget again. Will there be any more site work that is needed as they take over and commence their redevelopment activities? Like, are there foundations that are still left there that need to be either, taken out or managed, or is it going to be totally sort of clean fill and those kinds of things, which, all those are, valid questions that I think we will answer. I just don't know that we can answer them today. But I think we need to, come up with some understanding of that. We'll have to have a mutually, agreeable solution on what that kind of turnover condition is for us and for them.
Well, isn't there a larger issue here that we need to talk about? And that is, if we proceed and undertake the responsibility of demolition and site preparation, that is a significant difference from what was originally anticipated when we invited bids on the building. It seems to me that we at the very least need to consider whether, given that, we need to consider whether, if we're going to assume this responsibility, we resolicit the opportunity of the site to others. I want to hear from Caroline and Mark on that, and from other members of the authority. But it seems to me that that's essentially the elephant in the room. Is our assumption of the responsibility to demolish and prepare the site such a significant change that we need to look broadly as to what opportunities it presents to us. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Peter, or do you want to defer it, or want to hear from the Mankiti Group? But it does seem
no, good. I think that is the core question. I expect what we'll spend most of the time discussing. One thing I would say, and I think it relates to Mr. Restrepo's comments from the last meeting about sort of the initial procurement process is that the way that we handled the RFP to begin with was an option where we asked folks to either say that they were willing to take that on or if they needed the WRA to take that on. So I wouldn't say it changes like what was put out there. But you're correct in that, like, ultimately, and that's why we would need to address it in the land disposition agreement, is that through that option that we provided to respondents, if the developer was going to be taking on the abatement and demolition, we were offering that $2.5 million credit. So I think to some degree we are addressing that by taking away the $2.5 million credit. But I think it's a valid question, and I think that's probably what we'll spend most of the time kind of discussing, is like, what are the advantages and disadvantages of continuing on with Mankiti Group under a potential amendment number 2 to the LDA, which obviously would extend timeframes for their exclusivity. It would benefit, one of the core benefits of the WRA would be that $7,500 monthly non-refundable deposit that would be accruing over that time frame. Versus if the LDA kind of terminated, we would not get those dollars. But to your point, it would enable us to just see what else is out there and if there is some other proposal or offer that's worth considering. So I think that is the core of the discussion.
All right, before we, Caroline and Mark, we want to hear from you, but before that, are there any comments by any members of the authority? All right, so Caroline and Mark, we're very interested in your views.
Sure. And, Mark, why don't I lead off? And I think you've got some of the detail around timeframes and costs that you'll fill in with. But number one, thank you for, continuing to engage with us around this project. It is something that is very important to us as a next development in Worcester and in our pipeline as a whole. And I think it's been really important to us to have the kind of open book discussions that we've had. I mean, you all actually took the time several months ago to look with us in great detail at, here are the specific, sort of financial implications of the way that capital markets and sources for funding these kind of projects have changed since the original solicitation. And, we had the opportunity to sort of show that in detail and propose a relatively significant, change to what we would propose would be built to be responsive to those conditions. And I think this is another important step in enabling the development to advance for us. And, I completely appreciate, Peter's comments about, the reason that we even want to define what this pad ready site would be after the WRA's work is what we want to be able to do is roll up our sleeves immediately on advancing the next steps of due diligence, design, and actually, raising the capital, putting together the capital to build this project. And it's just really important to know what your starting point is. And so I think that what this solution allows is, if we can advance knowing what that starting point is, it takes out a lot of the guesswork that no one knows today until we really get through those abatement studies, demolition studies, and then actually, get the building down. But we can be working to advance the development for the next year while all that's happening, so that once the building is down and you're at that pad ready site, we can then jump into the next stage of development, and you're not in a situation where you're resoliciting a developer, they're starting from scratch and likely adding 2, maybe even 3 years to the process of getting to construction. So we think that this is an excellent way for us to have full confidence that we continue spending real dollars and time to advance the project for this next year, because we owe you all, as part of this, we would need to get to the preliminary financing plan. We would have next stages of due diligence and design that we owe. And I think that, what Peter has proposed in terms of the monthly tolling non-refundable deposit that accrues over that time kind of adds I think it keeps us aligned on, we have no incentive to keep accruing that if we weren't going to move forward. So I think that what Peter has come up with is actually a very elegant way to continue a year of work that any developer would need to undertake while the abatement and demolition is occurring. And we, particularly in today's capital markets, will be much more successful because we know what that starting point is. Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything in terms of just, time
Before
and
Mark-
cost that's been,
before
oh,
Mark-
I'm sorry.
Before
Yes, sir.
Mark, I mean, essentially, as I understand it, your proposal of $7,500 a month is essentially a reasonably inexpensive
Yeah.
option, right? It's an option. I mean, by paying, what you're proposing is to pay $7,500 a month, but which gives you the right, the exclusive right to build on this property. It's an option agreement, essentially, isn't it?
It is. I think one thing to keep in mind, or two things to keep in mind. One is we would also be spending dollars on, when I say pre-development, on design, due diligence, market, collateral. It's significant dollars and time that go in during that period of time. So it's not just,
But
paying a
wasn't-
deposit and doing
Carolyn,
nothing for that year.
With all respect, isn't that what you were supposed to be doing since this bid was awarded?
Yeah,
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind is and Mark, maybe you can help me with the dates. I'm sorry, I believe it was about a year ago that we came to you all with the initial sort of results of, hey, this is how the world has changed since the initial solicitation and award. And so, we demonstrated all the work that had been done in that period. We proposed an alternative design that we, greatly appreciate you all actually taking the time to understand and approve. And then we've been in this period of figuring out, okay, again, kind of what is that starting point? What are we, when we look at our total development costs based on what that starting point is going to be, we've been really working with Peter to get to what's a solution that allows us to know what that is. And so now that we've kind of said, okay, let's take the guesswork out about the abatement and demolition, that puts us in position to, be off to the races in terms of the pre-development and financing of the project.
Okay. Mark? do you
And
wanna add-
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the one other thing I was going to mention is just I think it also sort of accounts for a little give and take on both sides, because we're advancing knowing that this is a WRA in a city that's very able and skilled at putting together the kinds of grants that Peter has outlined. But we're all trusting that that's going to happen, as we're continuing to advance the design dollars and other kinds of dollars on our end, we're trusting that that's going to happen. So I think that we struck a monthly dollar amount that takes both of those things into account.
Mark?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, to Caroline's point about the timing and just the investment in both thought and diligence that has been done. This project, even prior to the RFP, this goes back to 2021. So early 2021 is when we first started analyzing the site, both from a programming, architectural, engineering standpoint, and had professionals out visiting the site throughout that time from 2021 all the way up to the RFP and then beyond. Just the hundreds of hours on our team that have really been poured into this property to understand it deeply, to have a very nuanced perspective on how the adjacent properties are treated and how a development will progress. Our design and construction team has gone through 8 or 9 pricing iterations over the past 3 years since the RFP was released. So that level of effort and that thought investment is really, that's what we bring to bear now. And the process of de-risking those variables in the estimate now that have what is unknown qualities of it, especially around the abatement demo. I think achieving this path forward with the city, taking on the abatement demo, really goes a long way to achieving that state of readiness of the site so that we can eliminate those variables, that we have a really much more nuanced view on the development moving forward.
Are there comments, questions by any members of the authority? So, Peter, how do you propose we proceed?
Well, I think it's worth kind of hearing from the board just kind of how they viewed just the advantages and disadvantages of, conceptually, while there's no, specific amendment number 2. I mean, they have offered some language of what an amendment number 2 could look like. We're not seeking a vote on it, and we haven't sort of, negotiated what that specifically is. But I think they've centered on the core points that need to be addressed in the existing LDA. And so I think it's really just about weighing the different advantages and disadvantages of letting it really terminate. I don't think that they would. I think it's kind of impractical to like proceed under Amendment 1 without actually doing Amendment 2. So I think it's either that we would consider an Amendment number 2 and have them have that exclusivity for the period of time moving forward, or let it sort of terminate effectively. And then we would have to go back out to bid. I think that the basic advantages and disadvantages I see now, and if you want, like, we could, for the next board meeting, if it's helpful to like really kind of outline those advantages and the disadvantages for the board, we could certainly do that. But I think, some of the key advantages would be, again, the actual dollars and cents that the WRA board, WRA would receive as part of the non-refundable accruing deposit. I think there is some timeline advantages in terms of Caroline's point, I think is true, in that while we could put it out to bid and get different kinds of proposals, different kinds of interest, I do think that the last, really 2 to 3 years that they spent on it is not just like time lost or time that hasn't been, helpful in any kind of way for the developer's perspective. I know, the building's still standing there, but I think if we were to put it back out to bid, we might get different interesting proposals to consider, but I think that it would push out the redevelopment timeline if we were to identify a new redevelopment partner and have them begin from ground zero on, their own kind of due diligence. And then what comes of that? Do they have similar, kinds of, results as they go through their milestones of asking for extensions and all that? So there's definitely some risk of the unknown in that sense. Obviously, there's still a lot to go with Mankiti Group's proposal in terms of mostly securing the financing and all of that. But, I do think that we're sort of on the, 25-yard line, I guess, versus the goal line in terms of where we're at with their particular redevelopment strategy. So that's kind of the main disadvantage or risk in putting it back out to bid. But I think
let me ask a timing question before we get, and I really want to hear from other members of the authority, but timing. Let's assume we proceed in this way, and that is that we undertake responsibility for demolition and site preparation. What's your best estimate as to when that process would be completed?
I would feel good about it being completed in 2027. Figuring out when in 2027 that occurs, I think, is a moving target. I would feel definitely strongly about, being able to get it down and done by the end of 2027. Whether or not we're able to accomplish that by, the late summer, early fall, I don't think it would be this time next year. We'd hopefully have it underway and in progress this time next year, but it wouldn't be done by this time next year.
Year and a half or so.
Yeah.
Okay. So, comments, please.
Yeah. And I apologize. This is Sherry, because my internet's not that stable here. But I mean, just speaking of timing, like, this has been 3 years. Like, I don't understand like why it took us 3 years to get to this point. And now we're saying the building's not even going to come down till end of 2027, potentially, maybe, hopefully. Like, that's 4 years. So I don't understand. I mean, I don't know construction all that well, but I don't understand why it's taken us so long to get to this point to say, we actually want you guys to take it down, not us. I don't know. Am I being unreasonable? I mean,
And
what
let us
safety
know
is
when you
allowed?
want to, I'm not gonna, like, let us know
Well,
when a question is
I
directed to
just
us
don't
versus
understand. Like, it just
others.
seems like
Yeah.
a really long time for us to get 3 years to get to the point where it's like, actually, you guys take it down. Like, I don't know. It just seems like we could have been doing all this stuff in parallel. That I'm just really frustrated because I just now is like 2027. So, which is optimistic. It sounds like.
Caroline or Mark to.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know. Let us know when it's directed to us. I fully appreciate your perspective. Okay, I fully appreciate that perspective. I think, and Peter, I think maybe what would be useful either here or at the next meeting, which I think is maybe what you were suggesting, is going through the timeline. And I think the thing that none of us anticipated was the impact that COVID and rising interest rates would have on the landscape for development and capital markets. So I think, Mark, can you remind me of the time? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Caroline, with all respect, when you submitted your bid, COVID was past us, right? We're dealing with the post-COVID period. I mean,
that's right. But the impact, nobody appreciate. I'm confident because I was very. All of us were very, deep in many projects across the country. The long-term impact of what the cost escalation and the interest rates would have on like, I don't know if you guys remember, and I think it was about a year ago where we showed, here's the returns, right, that investors required at the time, actively at the time that we bid for the project. And here's where it's gone. And this is the financial impact of it. It's just been enormous. And no one had any idea at that time that it was going to have this sort of long-term impact. And it's been, it's not just development. You guys have seen it in the ways that's limited, new businesses expanding and commercial leasing and all the kinds of things that cities like Worcester were like ready for. These impacts have really slowed a lot of it down. Mark, can you just so we can sort of recap the major milestones of award to getting to the LDDA, kind of just refresh us on those?
Yeah, the award, just RFP award was in late 2023, September of 2023. The executed LDA took another year from that. So September 30th, 2024 was when the LDDA was finally executed. So that's really when formal development activity started at the end of 2024. So it's been this past 2025 up until this point that has really been the due diligence period. But I understand it definitely has been, we've been studying this site, as I mentioned, since 2021. So this abatement and demo is somewhat of a reversion to the original concept that the city had with the site, understanding that they have that access to other subsidies that for-profit developers would not be able to access. So given the market financial stressors on the project and on the marketplace, I would say it's not surprising that that's kind of evolved into this proposed path forward at this point.
So basically, from the time the agreement was executed in September of 2024, we then spent the 6 months doing further design, optimizing a unit mix, and realizing, hey, at this point, given investor returns, the sort of original design isn't feasible, and we can look around the submarket and see that others aren't. It's not just this project; it simply is the constraints of the capital markets and cost of construction right now. So that's why we brought to you all the proposal. And I'm trying to remember what month it was last year. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say it was like April. Yeah. April. And so then we've been, kind of working through answering questions, getting everyone comfortable with something that still provides the design impact, but is feasible. And then that's kind of what took us to the next level of saying, hey, we think that what makes this most feasible and allows us to advance and not, sort of not lose this period of time is for the WRA to access what it can access to bring the building down. But I certainly hear the frustration. We would like it to be for construction today. So I don't discount the frustration.
I think what we're having trouble understanding is that it was about a year ago that you came to us and said, okay, this, we believe it's feasible, is what we took. At least I understood. We believe it's feasible to do this project, but the design has to change. And here's how we propose to do it. And I don't think that was, my recollection is that was not contested, right? So I think we signaled to you, okay, well, we understand that. So that was a year ago. And what I hear from, I share Sherry's frustration as, are you able to, I mean, you know the markets better than any of us. Are you able to say to us that today, as things stand today, if the building was down, if the site was ready, is this a project you want to proceed with?
Yeah.
And well, are you sure about that? I mean, proceed with that as, I don't mean proceed with by taking an option to do something in the future. Is it something you're prepared to commit to do? That's
Absolutely. And we can't,
then why do we need an option? Why can't we just have your commitment that we'll take the building down, we'll have it done on a certain site, and you will commit to build this project as soon as it's done? What's keeps you from doing that?
I think that's what we are committing to. It's just that this is a way of providing an accruing deposit. Tell me what the.
No, you're not, Caroline. You're saying we'll pay you $7,500 a month, preserve the option of doing it. That's a lot different than committing to do it. I don't want to be in the position, I won't be on this authority, but I'd hate to be reading in the newspaper that, you know, after several months for a lousy $75,000 or 10 months, you said, you know what? You decided we're not interested in this project. And according to what I understand your proposal is, that's your right. That's a right you want to preserve, which is to pay us $7,500 a month and then the right to walk away. That's frustrating to us.
I think the challenge that we have is because of all of the changes in the market and in the proposed execution of the project, we now need any developer would need the time that was originally contemplated in the agreement to say, okay, now we say we take the design to the next level. We finalize a unit mix. We take it to capital. I mean, you can't go to capital markets and not have and say, well, the cost of the demolition could be this, it could be this, it could be this. Now you're in position to go and say, hey, our set of assumptions are based on a pad ready site. It's a very different conversation. And that process takes time. And we need to advance now that we've got a baseline, we need to advance the design itself, which is what gets you towards being ready to submit a permit application. There's still, it's not an unusual, it's a pretty typical time frame, which is why it was contemplated in the original agreement. We're starting from, I think what we collectively learned was the optimal baseline in today's market.
Mr. Chair, may I say
If
something?
I may.
Please.
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Walter.
Mr. Weeks.
I certainly share the frustration that has been expressed. And one of the reasons the WRA board decided to let's see if we can ascertain the funds to do the abatement and to do the demolishment is because this is a signature project for the city. And the longer the building stays there, public senses that nothing's happening. And so what I'm hearing still, and again, even after we're committed to try and secure the funds to demolish the building and to do the abatement, the commitment from Mankiti Group is still kind of up in the air, still going to capital market, which I believe some of that discussion, which I know has been, I guess what I'm saying is we would have hoped to have more guarantees, more assurances from your group, McKinney Group, to say, yes, we can do this once the abatement and building is raised, we can move forward. But again, there's still, the waters are murky and muddy, and so it's still a lot of ambiguity in the air, which is really is going to come back to the board. Well, what has the board members been doing, and why is it taking this long?
We're obligated. I think what's important to note is we're obligated during this period. Again, it's not just a sit by and see what happens, but in order to achieve what we have to achieve during this extended due diligence period, we have to spend quite a lot of money on design and additional due diligence. So we can, in addition to the monthly accruing deposit, like we become more and more invested, and we would not be choosing to spend those dollars in that time if we didn't think that there was a there here. But we need the amount of time that was originally discussed and negotiated to get there. We're just starting from a different baseline now.
But haven't you had that time? At least over the last year?
Well, we haven't, because, and we should have pulled the full timeline together from the past year, and I apologize that we did not do that for today. But our initial presentation to you was in April. A lot has happened since then to get to the point where we would understand what the starting line might be. And I think that's something, again, just a failure on our part not to have brought that today. But I think it would be important I would like the opportunity to pull that together for you all as just a refresher for all of us, frankly, so that we can see what's happened over the last year and why we couldn't be fully off to the races while figuring out what the starting line was going to be. And now we're there.
Give me some visibility. I mean, what is it you want to show us? Help me.
So I believe our initial presentation to you was April of last year, but then I think we came back. There have been several iterations from April of last year till now, and then working with Peter on this kind of approach to how the abatement and demo would occur. And I think putting together that timeline would actually be quite important. And again, I'm sorry that we didn't do it for today. But I think it would demonstrate that it's not like nothing has happened over the past year, and why we weren't in position to advance further until we understood what this amendment was going to look like and what the baseline would look like.
How long do you think we know we're proceeding? The assumption is we're going to proceed to demolish the building and have the site ready in a year and a half or so. How far into that period, if we stay with you, and by the way, there's no question of bad faith here. This is a business issue, trying to get something done. How long do you think it will take you from now to the year and a half from now to determine that you are committed in the legal sense, as well as to do this project? How far into that time period will it take you to make that judgment?
The timeline that we have studied is the timeline that the amendment and then the agreement lay forth. And Mark, I don't know if you can pull those up, because what we went back through last week. Okay, what we owe at that 1 year mark is a financing plan. There's a period of time of then review from the WRA. I think those milestones we know we're comfortable with. And we ought to outline those for you all. I don't know if we could do that right here on the spot. Again, these are things we should have pulled together, and I apologize that we didn't.
No, I mean, that's the question that I think is behind our concern is we are tired of uncertainty, right? And I'm sure you are as well. But I think the question I just asked you was a key question. That's what we need to know as we evaluate what we must do. Look, we've got a public responsibility here. And the fact that this building is still standing months after we told our tenants, you must get the hell out of this place. And months after we incurred very significant costs in getting them to do that, is embarrassing. So that's the question I have. And I think the answer to that question would be useful to all of us. When is assuming we take this building down, assuming it's going to be down by, let's call it middle of October of 2027, when within that period of time can you tell us with certainty what you will build and what it will be like? That's what we need to know. Is that a fair
Mark,
question?
can you, I think it's a very fair question. I don't want to speak out of turn of what's outlined in the agreement, because I know that I'm confident with that.
You don't have to tell us
Okay.
now, but before our next meeting, we need to know that.
Okay. I think
With
that's very
with-
fair.
And with certainty.
Yes.
Members of the authority, does any reaction to that? This is my question.
Yeah.
I did advance. Go ahead.
So I agree with the chair, and I agree with the other board members in terms of what has been said, and certain frustration has been growing in the past few years. Before I joined the WRA, just recently, obviously I'm reading the papers, I'm hearing all these great things that are going to happen to the Denholm building, and at the end of the day, I commend all the work that has been done by the Minkiti Group, also by the city, and by extension the WRA. Clearly, the Minkiti Group have spent a significant amount of money, but at this time, as the WRA member, we have a responsibility to the public. We have a responsibility to the city of Worcester to get something done in the Denholm building. And if we do not apply pressure to a developer, any developer, we're not doing our jobs. And the stakes are really high here. And it seems that once the building has been completely abated and demolished, we're going to be sitting on a prime piece of real estate located in downtown Worcester at a city that desperately needs more housing. Everybody would agree with that. And once the entire site has been completely remediated, then it's going to be a heck of a lot more attractive, more marketable to sell to somebody else. So we continue to have that option. It seems that we have that option to put it out to bid if we need to, just like the developer has the option to get out of the deal if it needs to. Granted, of course, they're going to lose some money, but in the grand scheme of things, it won't be that much, relatively speaking. I know that there's a Second Amendment that's coming our way. Perhaps we become a bit more restrictive. We add language in there that we as board members feel more comfortable with to ensure that something does happen, maybe not immediately, but as soon as this building is demolished and it's in the pad ready, that the site is pad ready for construction. We put a lot of thought into that amendment number 2 that we're going to be doing with the Minkiti Group to ensure that that happens. And if an agreement is not reached, then we seriously consider putting it out to bid. Although I would love nothing more than to see the Minkiti Group complete this project. They've done a lot of great things for the city, and hopefully they will continue to do that. But clearly, it's been a number of years, and unfortunately, the progress that we thought we were going to see by now, it hasn't happened.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so why don't we, Mark and Caroline, why don't we leave this with you, right?
Yep.
I want to make a firm decision on this, not later than our next meeting.
I would
Agree.
propose that we owe you a memo in no more than 2 weeks. So also you're not receiving it right before the meeting. And I would like the chance to recap what has happened. And then outline, I'm so sorry, I'm choking. outline what the path forward is, and to your question, when could you actually be at a closing from the time the building is down, if we assume it's down in 18 months? Put that in front of you all. And I think that when we do that, we can demonstrate that that would be faster than resoliciting after that 18-month period. But I'd like the opportunity to do that if you would grant us that.
Sure.
Sorry.
Now, is there anything else? Any other questions or observations from any members of the authority? Or Peter, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. I think it's been helpful. We want to make sure we understand each other. As I said, there's no question here of bad faith. I think we understand what your needs are. I hope you understand what ours are.
Certainly.
Certainty always beats uncertainty. So let's try to get to that point. Good. All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is, well, actually, it's the first. Next item is the grounds maintenance services agreement.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is
Please.
go ahead. So this is to consider authorizing execution of amendment number 3 to the ground maintenance services agreement with LEI Corporation in the amount of $50,000. That agreement covers general grounds maintenance in terms of like landscaping and all that in the nicer weather, but then more importantly, and the reason for this is the snow. As you can imagine, over the last couple months with the snow that we had, we frame our cost of that agreement based on anticipated snowfalls, and it was significantly higher than anticipated on what we've been averaging over the last few years. And so this $50,000 additional amount will cover what we need to address in terms of what's outstanding with them at this point, but then also gives a little bit of cushion because the contract goes through November, I think November, December. And so in the chance that we might have an early snowfall next year, we'll have some balance on the contract to cover a snowfall event if we get one in October or November of next year.
Okay. Questions? Is there a motion? Would someone please move?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
With it.
Good. Let's have a roll call.
Yes, I'll start with Mr. Pepper.
Nick, can you hear us?
I did see him come off mute. I think he's still maybe having audio challenges. That's okay, Nick. Mr. Restrepo,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Ms. Pitcher,
Yes.
and Chair Angelini.
Yes. Okay. So authorized. Next item.
Yes, the next item is to consider authorizing execution of the federal fiscal year 2025 subrecipient agreement with the Worcester Regional Transit Authority relative to Federal Transit Administration funding. So as the board might recall, the way that we access the FTA dollars that we use for preventative maintenance and capital improvements at Union Station flows through the WRTA. So each year we have this subrecipient agreement with them. It's quite involved. We are familiar with all of the details involved. It looks the same every year. So we do that part on our end internally for the board, so you don't have to have too much brain drain in reading all the various clauses that often come with federal funding. But this is the latest for this current federal fiscal year. Sometimes it can be confusing because when you think of like local fiscal years, they tend to be like almost one ahead. So the way that like a local fiscal year works from July to June is usually one in ahead of the federal fiscal year. So we're currently in federal fiscal year 2025. And this memorializes the plan that we have that is probably more, I guess, easy to follow along in your finance reports that we've talked about before with the different phases of FTA funds and the different capital projects that we have planned for those different phases, as well as preventative maintenance. The formatting of those dollars and this is a little kind of harder to kind of follow along, but that's the dollars and cents are consistent with what we're tracking and what's in this agreement. So we've done that review in our budget office as well. And I want to appreciate Alexis's on the call as well for all of her efforts and making sure that we're keeping track of every dollar and cent.
Okay. So we need a motion. Motion to authorize execution of this agreement. Is there such a
So
motion?
Motion
moved.
to approve.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Need a roll call
Second.
vote.
Yes, I'll start with Mr. Pepper. We can see you, so if you want to give us a yes, we can probably see your lips. say yes, if you'd like to vote on it. I know you might still be having
Nick, can you
audio
hear us?
challenges, though.
Nick, can you hear us? I don't think so.
I think it's
Yeah,
frozen
yeah.
again.
His connection, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Restrepo,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Ms. Pitcher. I got
Yes.
your name. And Chair Angelini.
Yes, and Mr. Pepper has just voted yes.
That's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right. Greyhound Lines, Inc.
Yes, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this, especially considering the clock, but wanted to make sure the board is aware of this. We're working on this lease agreement right now. So you might not be familiar with this because this goes back a long time. So Greyhound has the lease with us for what's known as like the bus slips. So because it is an intermodal station, we have the intercity bus services in addition to the service that WRTA provides. And so you'll see there Greyhound, Peter Pan, another provider, all of those bus slips are actually under Greyhound's control. So it originated in 2006. So very shortly after the restoration of Union Station, we embarked on that relationship with them. And the original lease agreement was a base term of 10 years with an option to extend for 10 years, which was exercised in 2016. So we are coming at the end of that full 20-year lease agreement and are now considering what to do next in terms of the mostly procedurally. I think they've done a good job with the way that it kind of works right now, for lack of a better word, is the other operators like Peter Pan is sort of subleasing, a couple of those, and they figure out the coordination of the scheduling of the different bus services to make sure that there's always adequate sort of spacing there for when the buses come and go. But it's our relationship is directly with Greyhound, not with all of those individual providers. And I think they've done a good job. They're definitely interested in, renewing. If we want to consider that, obviously there's only so many primary kind of major players in the industry, being Greyhound and Peter Pan. I was going to do a little research as well of other sort of bus stations, intermodal hubs in the Commonwealth to see if it's structured similarly in those places, if they have like one agreement and then the other providers kind of work it out amongst themselves, or if they do like separate, it would be more to manage if we had like a separate agreement with Greyhound, a separate agreement with Peter Pan, and all of that, and the coordination of schedules and all of that. But I think they've done a good job, and I do know that they're interested in renewing. I might have already mentioned that, but they've reached out to us too and said that if we can consider renewing and directly working with them to renew, they would be open to that. We are looking into just what our options are, kind of with the law department, making sure that we're following whatever procurement requirements we have. Like, is there eligibility for us to just simply work with them on a renewal if we want to go that direction? Or do we have a requirement to put it out to bid? Certainly, if we feel like we want to put it out to bid, we could do that, but we want to make sure that we know what our options are as a board. So really just kind of introducing this, putting it on the radar. The date is July, so we have several months to work through the details and then ultimately, have that continuity to ultimately have action before it expires in July. I'm sure Greyhound would like to know in advance of that. So we'll try to, do that sooner than later in April or May with the board, but really wanted to just make sure that the board was aware that this is coming up and how where we're at now and how we're approaching it.
Good. Thank you.
So we should know more like next month, next meeting. Or
Yep.
April, May.
Yep.
Okay.
And no
Okay.
vote. Yeah. No vote necessary on it. Really just
Okay,
kind of wanted
thank
to
you.
mention that.
Gotcha, thank you.
This reminds me that there was comment made at the listening session about improving access between the bus station and the train station.
That's been addressed. Yes.
So the-
So there is, as the board might,
That-
you can picture it,
But
where those
was-
buses disembark there, where passengers disembark, there is a corridor, pedestrian corridor, that's a covered corridor that goes from that bus hub, if you will, into Union Station, which is the most convenient and accessible way for those folks that are maybe getting off the bus and getting onto a train to get to the train. And there have been some times where that door has been locked. Sometimes I think, you know, there are some behavioral issues in that corridor from time to time, but the solution to that is not to lock the door. So we have addressed that, and that door will remain open because that is important. And that is the most accessible way, because otherwise those people getting off the bus have to go around to the front of Union, or I guess around the other to the backside, but most of them I think go around to the front. And with the sidewalk conditions and the slope and stuff, if you're, you know, have different abilities and things, we need to make sure that that corridor remains unlocked, and so that has been addressed.
Good, thanks very much. Take care of
Yep.
that. All right, next is the authorization of a contract with Mass Development Finance Agency regarding site readiness program grant. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as mentioned earlier, as we look at the different sources to help us tackle the abatement and demolition at the Denholm, the first kind of dollars that we've secured is a $500,000 grant from Mass Development through their site readiness program. And so seeking the board's authorization to ultimately execute that. We do not have it in final form yet. We're waiting on Mass Development to give us the final form. The way these typically work is that, and certainly our law department reviews it to make sure that our interests are protected, but it's a standard form that comes from them. It's not something that we like negotiate. So it's pretty standard procedure that we'll make sure, you know, is satisfactory in terms of the form and the terms and conditions. But I don't think it'll be necessary for the board to really get into, you know, deliberating on the terms and conditions, because it's a standard
Right.
form that any grant recipient receives from Mass Development. So we just want to make sure that we can, you know, move right along once we get that from them to get going on that work.
So this is what they call a formality, but we need this approval. So is there such a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. Let's proceed. Roll call.
Mr. Restrepo,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
yes.
Ms. Pitcher,
Yes.
and Chair Angelini.
Yes. All right. So before we go to status reports, let me just return to the Minikiti situation for a minute in terms of timing. Let's see, when will our meeting be in April, Peter?
I'm glad you asked. I was going to bring that up. For a couple reasons, I think it would be great to do an in-person meeting in April, and specifically on April 9th, if that works for the board. We have a couple things that I think we already have some things
The
pending
9th?
that will, yeah, April 9th, if possible.
Okay with me.
It would be like a week earlier than we would typically maybe do
Yeah,
April 16th.
At
But
9 o'clock or 8?
yep, we would do 9 o'clock in person, and
Okay.
I'll look at ideally, I'll check the room situation at City Hall. We'll consider a different room if it's booked, but ideally it would be
Okay.
9 a.m. at City Hall, and I'll
Works for me as
confirm.
well.
That's fine.
Does it work for everybody?
I may be
Yes.
traveling. I'm not sure yet, but I could communicate with Peter.
Okay. If you're traveling, would you be able to join us remotely?
Yes.
Yeah, we could do hybrid. Yep.
Good, we can do a hybrid. All right, yeah, that's good. I asked the question because it may well be that we should have a short special meeting prior to that meeting so that we can make sure we've fully covered the situation regarding Denholm's building in Minikiti. Let's just recognize that as a possibility. I can
Yeah.
discuss it.
I agree.
And if any of you have any questions about that you'd like to discuss with me in advance, please don't be bashful. I know those words are not needed with this group. In any event.
Was I rude?
No, you weren't rude at all. You were direct, and I appreciate it very much. It was good and warranted. But let's remember, as I said, essentially what they're asking for is an option. And,
Yeah.
you know, and it's not, $75,000 should not be the difference between
No.
proceeding or not. So we'll talk about that, but, and
Okay.
I'll be back to you, but for the time being, we're firm on April 9 date. So good. All right. Status reports. Peter, we turn to you.
Yes, I think in the interest of time, I'll probably be fairly brief and definitely interested if the board has a question on anything, we can spend the time that we have on any of those questions. There is an MBTA working group meeting on Monday coming up. I know the chairman's been skeptical of the what comes out of that, but we are continuing to have that engagement for sure. So that's happening. And then on the Denham, we talked about former RMV property, no significant change since the last board update. So we own it. We were trying to get through a couple of things that were right in front of us particularly with the listening session and the Luciano's RFP before moving on to a community meeting that we're going to do on the future of that property, informing our request for proposals process for that property. Right now it's, the property has some challenges in terms of its conditions, but it's not like we have the same level of carrying costs like that we do with the Denham. So while we want to move right along with it, it's not, I guess, super urgent, and we want to make sure that we're deliberate about that. Again, we'll get the community input and do a thoughtful process with the RFP. We are moving, and I think I had mentioned this, on just utilizing the parking lot because we might as well. It's there, we own it, so we'll utilize the parking lot for both the South District Fire Station contractor needs as well as Polar Park parking. So we're getting it set up for that interim use, and the WRA will receive some revenues out of that. I do not have much of any update on Madison Properties this month. They're continuing to try to, get the progress going on the hotel. I think is their primary focus. This purchase and sale agreement is still pending with GFI Partners to purchase the second residential site and construct a residential site. They have the planning board approval. They're working on financing now for that. And then the Union Station Urban Renewal Plan, interestingly enough, we had mentioned at the last meeting, and this could have potentially implications to the procurement process that we mentioned earlier with Greyheim. This is part of what we're kind of running down an answer to is I had mentioned the Union Station Urban Renewal Plan could be expiring because it was created in 1996. And trying to identify the specific date when that would expire and what our options would be if we wanted to consider extending it or renewing it and what that process would look like. I have gone through all of the records that we have around the initial establishment of it, the WRA vote, the city council vote, the letters to the state, the planning board vote. None of it actually says what the term of that plan is. So I have in my head reference point, I don't know where it came from, that I thought it was 30 years, which I think at the time in the 90s, that was pretty typical in terms of like the duration of an urban renewal plan. In fact, these days they're encouraging redevelopment authorities to do 20 years. I think our downtown urban renewal plan is 20 years. And so I have this kind of assumption in my head that it was 30 years, which would be expiring in 2026, but trying to make sure that we have a specific reference point for that. So I've been trying to get in touch with the person at the state office to see if they have something or could give us that official determination. It's been a few weeks, so I just have been trying again to just get that response from them to see if they can clarify that for us. But we've been combing through our records, and I haven't found anything that definitively says 30 years or expiring in 2026. It's just a lot of it, being established without clarifying that. So that the primary thing related to that is that when you have an urban renewal plan active, it gives the redevelopment authority a little flexibility on procurement where they can do a lot of direct negotiation. And so if there is not an active renewal plan in place, we would be more subject to the typical process under Mass General Laws 30B, which we've actually been doing, just because out of our own interest, making sure that, as you think about the RFP that we did for the Denham or the RFP that we're doing for the former RMV, like we are, just doing more or less 30B processes anyways. But a good example would be with this Greyhound situation. Can we do a direct negotiation with them? Is that permissible under 30B, or is it only permissible under an active urban renewal plan? And do we have to bid it? Should we bid it? So we're just trying to make sure that we have all of our kind of ducks in a row on that.
Let me ask this question. What would the harm be of extending it by 10 years?
I don't think there would be a harm. It's just then understanding from the state what's involved in that process. I think it's certainly not as involved as when you create an urban renewal plan for the first time. I was happened to chat with somebody at the Boston Redevelopment Authority recently, and they said they do extensions all the time, and it's not that complicated. But just more importantly, and I think I alluded to this at the last meeting, is while the procedure might not be very cumbersome, it's also, I just don't know if they would expect from us an update of like, well, why are you doing that, and what's left to accomplish in that plan, because we have accomplished most, significant amount of the goals and objectives of the plan as it was originally created. And actually, you just reminded me, and I caught it in the minutes. I'll email the board. Ms. Pitcher asked last meeting for a copy of that plan. I'll email it to the board today if you want to take a look at that plan.
Who was the counterparty, Peter?
The counterparty?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
If we extended it, aside from just moving to extend it and extending it, who else has to approve it?
The state, yeah, the state.
But who?
It's under the it used to be Department of Housing and Community Development. Now it is technically under Housing and Livable Communities. It's specifically under the division of like local services and livable communities. So the representative who runs that office has been there a long time, a lot of institutional knowledge there. But because it's all under that enabling statute of 121B under Mass General Laws, there's a process of like involving the state in that and getting their official approval. Essentially, it's not unilateral at the local level. The state has to sign off on it.
Well, I know, I leave it to you, and I know Alexander's on the call, but it seemed to me avoiding uncertainty is appropriate. So I'd be inclined to come up and say, hey, we want to extend this by 25 years or 100 years or something, and see what their reaction is. But I'll leave it to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll report back.
Go Bulls, go Bulls.
Are there any, while we have a couple minutes, are there any questions on any of those things just that we typically provide status on?
Peter, just to be clear, is the recommendation from the city to extend this urban renewal plan, or is it to just let it expire?
I don't know that we've formulated our official recommendation to you yet. We're looking to just kind of understand exactly when it is expiring, because for all I know, if it was 40 years, it's not even expiring. And then to the chair's point, really understanding what is involved in that process. Because if it is a simple process, I mean, it certainly doesn't do any harm. Like if we could just send a letter of request to the state for a 10-year extension, and that's really all that's to it, we might, lean on that kind of recommendation, but we haven't, I guess, formalized the recommendation to you yet. We will, hopefully at the next meeting.
So is there a benefit of having it, Peter?
I think it's primarily just the flexibility around certain things like procurement. I don't think there's much else in terms of implications of it, to be honest.
Certainly no disadvantage.
10 o'clock.
Yeah. Whether or not even if it expired, the WRA still has the authority to hold property. So it doesn't mean like we can't own Union Station anymore. We can still own Union Station. It just has to do with sort of how we conduct certain activities. If we have some of that, I guess, flexibility under the urban renewal plan, or if it's more of a structured process under, I think it, again, primarily related to procurement versus anything else.
Right. If it's easy to extend, then my vote would be to extend it. That way, if a big thing comes around in the next few years, it just takes an amendment to include that additional project or that additional idea into the original one, as opposed to starting one from scratch.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Financial update report. You'll find materials that Jane has distributed to us. I assume there are no questions regarding any of that, but I, once again, as I do every meeting, encourage you to read those materials, and if you have questions, to ask them.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might just
yes,
interject that I believe we're planning on April as well for our annual audit presentation. So we'll have our auditor give you all an overview of their report for FY25.
Yep. Good. All right. Is there any other business? All right. Well, now comes the most important time of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Pepper? Mr. Restrepo?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Ms. Pitcher,
Yes.
and Chair Angelini.
Yes.